I'm Bambi Francisco for Vader TV, the network for innovators, and I'm speaking with Max Levchin. He's the CEO and founder of Slide. And for this segment, we're going to talk about the changing and evolving culture online and how Slide is capturing activity or engagement, kind of that fun stuff, no business stuff this time around. Right, Max? Max, in a CNN piece, you said that you're in a unique position to capture engagement. I want to dive into that, but first, we really need to know the products and the people and how people are engaging with your products. So talk a little bit about Super Poke and what is it, Top Friends, and what's the other one?
They all have silly names.
Funwall. What are they doing?
So they're each a little bit different, Funwall is basically an attempt to generalize. If you know the experience where somebody sends you a link to a funny YouTube video, or somebody sends you an image and it's a little too large to open in your email, or you don't quite have the right media reader, or it is really not something that belongs into your email. And more importantly, it's actually kind of hard to filter, because a lot of times you get something and you're like, oh, it's probably going to be terrible, I'm not going to read it. So Funwall started out as this sort of a concept of people want to broadcast interesting, funny stuff to their friends. And email isn't really the best platform for it. What's really great for it is social networks, which one in my view is the next operating system. But more importantly, that's where your friends already are. So this concept of sharing interesting short-form media clips that make you smile with your friends, it's worth building a tool for. And so a few million people every day blast that out, and tens of millions of people look at it. So it's a huge hit on Facebook, but it's also now available on...
They take a photo of themselves and then they just blast it out?
No, it's anything. So it's both user submitted and user selected media. So people can say, I love that clip on YouTube, and we make it very simple for them to just send it out to all their friends. And it's any form of media you can really imagine. It's anything from I take a picture of myself because I think I look funny today and send it to a few friends and get comments back on that's a stupid haircut or something like that. That's what I get usually. Or something like that's the craziest news. Here's a snapshot of something.
Are they broadcasting out just to their network or to everybody, or they can do both?
It's configurable, so you decide who you want to send it to, and the convenience is that because it's a social networking application, we see who your friends are based with the APIs that we have from our social networking partners. And so the whole process of deciding who gets the content is really, really shortened. It's a real problem with email, for example, is you actually have to type up email addresses of all your friends, unless you're interested in creating a mailing list, which is not most people want to do with their time. So that's Funwall. And Funwall is interesting because Funwall is actually a meta product. Some of the most popular media types on Funwall are our own widgets. So the earlier Slide product, something we launched a couple of years ago, before the emergence of these formalized platforms like Facebook and MySpace and High Five, are slideshows and fun pics, which is a sort of a way to dress up an image, sort of a Photoshop for people with no time at all. And so those widgets are extremely, extremely popular. We have 150 million worldwide viewers looking at them every month, and that audience, loves our stuff and keeps creating more. And Funwall is a great way to share it. So it's sort of a Slide product inside Slide product to an extent.
And what about Super Poke, though?
Super Poke is actually
that's the one they pay for.
They pay for a small part of it sometimes. Super Poke is started out as a bit of a pun. So Poke was a feature or an app that Facebook built internally, and it's really like a one-bit code where you either poke someone or you're not. And it's a bit of a way to send signals and flirt and remind someone of your existence within the context of Facebook, where if you don't really know how to send a message or you don't quite have the right words, you can just poke them and they know you did it, and they can do nothing or they can poke you back. So that's the original. And Super Poke, we decided, well, wouldn't it be fun if you moved from poking to anything like slapping and kicking and kissing and hugging and wishing happy birthdays to, and really evolved into something like Hallmark in the context of Facebook and several other platforms, where you decide who it is you want to do it to, and then you pick from a large selection of actions. And these actions are basically like little postcards, but
almost like emoticons, or like the next
version
of
it's
emoticons.
It's a bit of a literary emoticon, because most of the focus there is on language, and we throw in things like defenestrate, and people complain because they think it's either too confusing, and then the literature junkies say, oh, it's the best one ever, and there's a lot of user activity around people suggesting new pokes. Right. And then we pushed it even further and actually started producing a little bit of animations to illustrate the pokes. And so it's really evolved into something that looks like Hallmark. And it's extremely popular. It's, on things like Valentine's Day or St. Patrick's Day, we get as many as 10,000 pokes a second. So
10,000 pokes a second.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
So that's
who's the user base? Who's doing this stuff? I mean, I'm on Facebook, but I don't think I'm the.
The interesting thing about Superpoke is that you'd think it'd be younger than it is. So it turns out that the median age there is 24. It's mostly women, although because it is sort of a Hallmark business, or Hallmark-like business, you can very quickly see the products targeted at guys and products targeted at girls, and different pokes appeal to different segments, and we don't necessarily consciously design for that. Most of our demographic and psychographic work is usually bottoms up, it's not top down. Mm-hmm. So we don't pre-assume or presuppose that girls will want this and guys will want that. We sort of introduce new content, and then we see what people like, and then we go, okay, well, now let's analyze. Is this everybody, or just women, or just men, or some fraction of both? So Superpoke is a little bit of a experiment in cultural anthropology and data mining.
Well, what are their actions? The way they're expressing themselves or communicating with people. What is it? How has that changed since 1999? And what are you capturing as far as how these people are, sending this version or the Web 2.0 version of Hallmark cards, I guess.
Right. It's pretty fascinating. There's a lot of really, really interesting data, and the cool thing about Slide in particular is that at a huge scale you really see major trends, and I think that affords us the opportunity to be really at the cutting edge of what's cool and hip and who's going to be big. So sometimes we can predict which band is going to make it. But
what band is going to make it?
If people are chattering about it, or they're sharing the YouTube clip of some concert, like, oh, never heard of that band, but it's big with
there's a monetary opportunity there, possibly.
There's like a marketing research agency.
Sure.
What's big today? We don't spend a lot of time doing that, actually, but we do spend a lot of time figuring out media consumption trends. And the one sort of controversial trend is actually like a big ongoing debate between me and some of my really close friends and people who work at Slide, which happens to be the same thing. Is long-form video coming more of reality online or not? And if you ask somebody a year ago, a year ago, people would tell you no chance. YouTube is the 30-second clip.
Not if you asked me.
Of course, but you're always.
I'm always long form. Anyway, that's enough.
You have a vested interest in long form, but anyway, so the long form was something that was generally poo-pooed and dismissed decisively even 6 months ago. Mm-hmm. And at this point, between Hulu and several sites that are, even Facebook itself doesn't really impose a lot of limits on the length of the video they allow you to record.
Sure.
So, well-produced, semi-pro quality video in very long form, like an hour, half a movie or a movie online, is that going to happen or not? And that's actually something that we're looking at right now and trying to establish. Do we have enough supporting evidence to say that's actually something that's really happening, or is this still a fluke? And it's interesting. Actually, I really love what Hulu has done with their video editing and the ability to clip out stuff and say, I love that and I don't really need the rest. But we are in a position to see that, and that's exactly the kind of data, the kind of information that
you're seeing that people are spending. They will, if it's quality, it's not buffering. I mean, the problem is that the technology wasn't there and the content wasn't there, and now if it is there, then of course, why wouldn't you watch some long form?
So the prevailing theory last year, I think it was sort of the abs theory, right? So if you're in front of a computer, your abs are flexed, then you really can only stay, not super flexed, but sort of trying to hold yourself straight. If you try to hold yourself straight for more than 5 minutes, it starts hurting. Okay. So you change, you move around, and when you do that, you're prone to stop the video. So that's kind of why you wouldn't really watch a long form. If you're on a couch, your abs are relaxed and zoned out, and you can watch or not watch, but the video is rolling. Okay. So that, I think that was one of the anthropological theories I heard about why long form doesn't make any sense in a desktop. And I think some of that may be true, but we are seeing long form video emerging relatively rapidly, and the differentiating factors appear to be quality of the content itself, quality of production, and quality of technology. Not running into buffering issues, not running into resolution is very important. If you're going to stare at a really short clip of somebody falling off a skateboard, it doesn't really matter how blocky it is or how jagged the lines are. But if you're looking at an hour of like a full-length Friends episode or something like that, to date myself here, you don't really want to look at something that's low quality.
What else about this user? I mean, you early on, that's why you switched to social networks, because you thought that was the operating system. What else are you learning from this community? Are they? I mean, I don't even know. I don't know what you've got to be. You're on the cutting edge. So, what is it about their behavior online?
I'm always on the kind of cutting edge of something. There are all sorts of interesting lessons, actually. One is. People are another sort of debate to throw in a controversial issue. So a typical lifespan of a social network is about 2.5 years, and they're all they're still around. Friendster is still kicking, and so is Rise, which was before Friendster, and but they're they go in and they go out.
Right.
Just high growth period, and then it fades. And there's a big open question of why.
Yeah.
And, last year people were pronouncing MySpace dead a little prematurely with 300 million users and all.
Yeah, sure.
But it's it was definitely the darling status was shifting for a little while in the press anyway, and then MySpace sort of fought back and appeared to be coming back strong. But ultimately, it's the users who decide. It's not really the press can only do so much for you, and so
they're a fickle crew.
Yeah, terrible people. But the question is, what makes social networks come into fashion and out? And one sort of study or one lesson that we've learned pretty decisively, social applications, the stuff that Slide makes, extremely self-serving here, makes people come back to social networks more often. Yeah. And as far as we can tell, although you need several years of data to really make that conclusive, is what makes them stick around, because their friends are contributing essentially different forms of metadata into their lives. So the breadth of the channel that users have into their lives from their friends, or in general from the outside, but from their friends in particular, that adds metadata that they can't take away with them to some other network, is what makes them stay. And so there's the opportunity to upload your own images, and you sort of nest your little home on MySpace or your little home on Facebook, and images is the first step, and then you fill out your interests and you collect your friends there, and that's kind of your profile, your personality, your digital persona online, and it's there. But that was the original theory was, once you do that, you'd never leave. How could you take all that stuff with you? But it turns out the value of the images you've uploaded dissipates very quickly. Yeah. So if you're young, you produce a lot of media every day.
You actually want that hidden.
Well, yeah, some of that. The keg stands, just can't get rid of those. But keep coming up.
I've seen those.
I know. That's the problem. Anyway, even without the keg stands, my images from 5 parties ago are really not relevant. There were 4 parties afterwards that were much better, and so it's just of a lot less value. Some important moments survive, but those are so important to you, you actually keep them around in other forms, and so you care enough to extract them from wherever they are and take them with you. So the switching cost isn't as high as people thought it was. People will, in fact, lift up and go to a different social network and bring their friends with them, because that's part of that's what you do. You reestablish your social list.
So why are they staying with you?
So why they're staying in social networks is through Slide products and other products in general, this concept of data that comes in from someone else. So if I share an image with you, or I add it, for example, in one of the products that we have in slideshows, we allow people to comment on your images with their own image. So, for example, you and I went to the same party, you have your little party slideshow, and I have an image that you don't have, let me contribute that to you.
Right, okay.
Once you have that, you don't really have it. It only exists on that social networking page. There's no way for you to take that with you anywhere all that easily. Right.
And
because of that, it's basically tethered to the page, and it tethers you to that image if you care about it, at least as long as that image is of value.
Right.
It's more valuable than your images because it's actually something I gave you. So there's an emotional attachment to the gifting portion of it, to the psychology of not wanting to frustrate your friend by taking off the image they produced and gave you. So There's a lot of interesting psychology that plays out there, and that's something that drives the staying power.
How often do people express themselves online, and what percentage of the people, of your users, are actively doing something? And what percent are just watching?
It's sort of the worst case scenario of the 80-20 principle, where 10% is probably the aggressive creators and 90% are casual, occasional creators and active watchers. It's
so 10% are the active creators. What percent of the content do they create? Because I remember from Jimmy Wales, 1% of the Wikipedians created 60% of the content. What is it? I
think Wikipedia is particularly special because the content production is so expensive. It's really, really difficult to write a good Wikipedia article.
Sure.
You can't just show up and, oh yeah, I had this thought about, amino acid, so I'm just gonna, write something up on protein folding today. I'd love to if I knew anything about it, but I think Wikipedia is at the outer edge of complexity for creators and value for the users. Incidentally, there's a inverse correlation. The harder it is, the obviously less likely people are going to produce it, but it's going to be more valuable to the viewers. In our case, we actually strive to, part of the long mission, it's not a mission statement, but it's a part of the mission of the company, is to make the 10% grow because the simplicity of content creation, in a previous point actually, if I get you out of your shell and contributing to my slideshow or collaborating with me on media, it's a huge benefit to the person because they feel the warm fuzzies of someone else giving them a gift of content or a gift of storytelling. It's powerful for you because you actually feel engaged and you'll come back to find out what the recipient thought or thanked you or what did they give you back. But then there's the benefit to Slide because we have more engaged users, and the social networks because they have people sticking around more and interacting. So part of our goal is to drive the 10% up. And that's generally done by making the content creation process as simple as possible and really sort of just, if I could make your images magically move from, you take a snapshot with your phone and it's already in a slideshow somewhere, that would be ideal.
Now, how do you measure? I mean, it's really easy to measure activity on, on sites, on websites. How do you measure activity on widgets? Is there a monitoring system?
Well, in our case, there's a monitoring system like you won't believe. It's probably the world's biggest widget activity monitoring system, or I'm sure
you capture that. It's not a third party.
Yeah, of course the trick is, if you show up to an advertiser and say, we're really, really engaged, and say, yeah, you got third party proof. And it's something that the industry is going to have to do. And Comscore actually started doing activity measurements with their widget score, I think it's called, the widget activity measuring product. But it's really very much baby steps. If you compare it to the sort of thing you can get from the third parties today and the sort of stuff that we capture, it's pretty different. The activity that we capture, for example, one way we think about it is broadly we have this notion of in-widget activities. And so these are actions that people take, and we try to break them down to the most granular level. And we assign different weights to them. So for example, if you saw someone's widget, you can join. Every widget has an automatic fan list associated with it. So you can join my fan list every time I produce a new widget. If I want you to be notified, you'll be notified. So it's a pretty nice way for people, the creators, to keep in touch with their audiences. And if they do decide to go from social network to social network, it's an easy way to bring the attention of the audience back to wherever it is they've gone to. So the email address submission is an extremely powerful. That's like a 10 out of 10 activity or engagement, because the users basically volunteer private information about themselves to us, saying, I love this, I want to be notified, etc. And then all the way down to I clicked on one image. And clicking on an image doesn't necessarily do what the user thinks it will do. Sometimes they may think that this will let them see the image zoomed in, or maybe they want to stop the show. And so we can't really judge how valuable that is. So it's considered least valuable, or one of the least valuable activities. So we have literally maybe a couple of hundred of these different events that we track and understand. And this is just in widgets. In social applications like SuperPoke and Funnel and Top Friends, it's even broader. But all this stuff is logged, and then you can start analyzing, are people doing high-value activities? Are they mostly doing low-value activities? Then you can try to shift the low-value activity into more high-value activity range. And then you can report on that, which is we do plenty of. And then ultimately, the industry, I think, will shift to reporting this to advertisers and basically saying our widgets are more powerful than other widgets because people are performing more high-value activities. For example, they're engaging with images in a way of commenting or rating or submitting their email addresses for fan lists, things like that.
So that's what you want to capture, engagement, not just impressions, but actual activity.
I think engagement will probably shift, and it'll probably take a long time. For
That's
Madison
sort of
Avenue.
the way they're going to capture. It's not just impressions, and it's
I think
not
that's
buying.
where the industry's going.
That's
I
where
think
you're thinking it's going.
the
How
entire ad
often
industry
that a
will-
person pokes, or how often a person just sort of
because
fiddles
that's the
what
real
is it
opportunity.
today? What, like, if you were to say, if there's like a cost
I think
per
the
engagement, what is it? How would you?
unfortunately,
define that?
I wish I could sell engagement
To Madison Avenue?
To Madison Avenue, because I think that's where.
But that's the next step for you.
It is. It is. Well, we're selling engagement to Madison Avenue, but the prices are still in CPM, so that should be indicative of sort of where the industry is. You know, they love the idea of engagement, they want to talk about it, but ultimately, when the media buyer says, "All right, well, here's my checkbook," what's the CPM?
So can you? I mean, we talked enough about this, but just I guess to wrap it up, just if you were talking to somebody from Madison Avenue right now and say, I can capture engagement and you should buy ads on my site because I can give you this much engagement, what do you say to them?
We try to come up with overall synthetic metrics that help value engagement across all of our apps. Typically, though, the way it works today, people are interested in a specific app. So, for example, in the case of SuperPoke, which is probably one of the most high-value, engaging apps that we have. People spend time
10,000
well, 10,000 a second that's a good activity
Day.
metric.
Yeah.
Yes. But actually, Valentine's Day may have been bigger than that. I think that's the last stat I remember from St. Patrick's Day, just around a few weeks ago. But the engagement in SuperPoke occurs around the selection of the content, where you decide which poke you're going to do, and then you preview the pokes, and then you actually send it, and then on the recipient side, you go into the feed of pokes that you have, and you play back the animations that you receive. And
so it should be a higher CPM, you think, because they're so active?
It translates to a higher CPM naturally,
like,
but that's the wrong way. That's the wrong way.
Oh, you don't want to talk about CPMs, but then
it's all trade secret until it's
still trying to figure that out. Then what do you think? What kind of ads work in that environment where people are actively?
In the case of SuperPoke, actually, we found that letting major brands sponsor pokes is a very functional way to advertise. People can pay us, and they have several times, many times, to buy a poke of the week or poke of the day. And it's interesting is that just saying poke sponsored by, I don't know, brand XYZ isn't all that exciting. And to the users actually don't engage with that as much. They just sort of say, okay, great, that's an ad, and they'll click on it and they'll go to some site, whatever. But the really interesting engagement that comes out there is when the brands actually get creative and they start, I think McDonald's wanted to, in a very subtle way, sponsor Flip a Burger with, and it's this sort of a random, silly, or very McDonald's.
Never really thought.
Well, it's a part of their campaign, which is actually about employing people from McDonald's, not getting people to eat at McDonald's, and reminding people that everybody at one point or another in their life has basically had a McDonald's job. And so, you've probably, not necessarily you, I haven't, I mostly swept floors in computer stores, but that was my first job. But most people have flipped a burger in some portion of their life. So it's an interesting, I think it's pretty clever, but SuperPoke turned out to be a pretty amazing, I think, experience for them, because they wound up doing this. Can't tell you how many, but tens of thousands of pokes per day.
So let me ask you one final question.
Sure.
Are people on Slide because they're promoting themselves, they're promoting their content, or are they on there to communicate?
Is there a difference? I think some people, particularly in your industry, communicate because they have something to say. I think most people communicate because they want to be noticed, especially in a broadcast sense. So, you and I out drinking red wine, talking about philosophy of art or something like that. We're probably communicating for communication's sake, or we're exchanging ideas. But more often than not, in a social networking context, for sure, they're basically saying, I'm really cool. In fact, I'm so cool you should notice me. And here's my story. And that's what we enable at a very sort of basic level. That's what we help them do. And
I'm sorry, last question, but the demographic again, they're
the SuperPoke one is
for all
median.
Though.
It's really broad. Once you get to like somewhere between 100 and 200 million users, you're basically out of. The prevailing demographic is somewhere between 14 and 34. It's about 60 62% women, 65% women,
Wow.
maybe at this point. Women are growing faster than men. Women are pretty aggressively getting
women
online.
love to express themselves, right? I don't know.
There's something to that. So it's really broad, though. To some extent, it's kind of a sign of
And finally, look, actually, no, I lied again. My last question. Actually, you don't even get involved. I mean, this is not you. You're not the type of person to communicate.
That's what makes me good at running a company like this.
Running the company. You don't eat your own dog food?
I eat my dog food all day long, but I do it for mostly testing purposes. I think a good producer, we probably know something about that, is the person who can look at a product in a really abstract sense and be very dispassionate about it at times, and then at times be extremely excited and just really be in love with what you're doing and really being the advocate for the user. But you have to be able to step away and just say, it doesn't really matter. We love this, everybody loves it, but users aren't going to take it. And that ability only comes from not being too
attached to
your,
it. Okay.
To be able to kill product if you have to.
To be able to kill products. Wow. Okay.
I do that all day long, actually.
Yeah.
Part of my job.
Okay, Max. Well, thank you. We've been talking about the evolution of online culture and how people express themselves online thanks to Slide. So, thanks again, Max. I've been speaking with Max Levchin. He is the CEO and founder of Slide. I'm Bambi Francisco.